In the year 2000, the internet was a different world, a digital frontier, untamed and electric. It was the Wild West of chat rooms and message boards, long before the polished walls of social media. A place where information and disinformation could spread like wildfire. And it was there, in the flickering glow of CRT monitors, that a ghost appeared in the machine, claiming to be a traveler from a broken future. In 1998, 2 cryptic faxes were sent to Art Bell, the popular host of the paranormal-themed radio show Coast to Coast AM.
From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening and or good morning wherever you may be across this great land of ours.
They spoke of time travel discovered in the year 2034 and the devastation that followed the Y2K bug. The message was perfectly targeted, reaching an audience already primed to believe in the extraordinary. But this was only the prelude.
Dear Art, I had to fax when I heard other time travelers calling in from any time past the year 2500 AD. Please let me explain. Time travel was invented in 2034. Offshoots of certain successful fusion reactor research allowed scientists at CERN to produce the world's first contained singularity engine. The basic design involves rotating singularities inside a magnetic field. By altering the speed and direction of rotation, you can travel both forward and backward in time. Time itself can be understood in terms of connected lines. When you go back in time, you travel on your original timeline. When you turn your singularity engine off, a new timeline is created due to the fact that you and your time machine are now there. In other words, a new universe is created. To get back to your original line, you must travel a split second farther back and immediately throw the engine into forward without turning it off. Some interesting outcomes of this are: 1. You meet yourself. I have done it often, even taken a younger version of myself along for a few rides before returning myself to the new timeline and going back to mine. 2. You can alter history in the new universe that you have just created. Most of the time, the changes are subtle. Sometimes I'll notice car models that don't exist, or books that come out late. The oddest one was a skyscraper that wasn't built near a favorite store of mine in New York. Interestingly, when you travel in time, you must compensate for the orbit of the Earth. Since the time machine doesn't move, you have to adjust the engines so you remain on the planet when you turn it off. Unfortunately, it was also discovered that anyone going forward in time from my timeline in 2036 hit a brick wall in the year 2564. Everyone who has ever been there has reported that nothing exists. When the machine is turned off, you find yourself surrounded by blackness and silence. Now, most time travelers are trying to find out where the line went bad by going into the past, creating a new universe, and proceeding forward to see if the same thing results in 2564. It appears the line went bad around the year 2000. I'm here now, in this time, to test a few theories of mine before going forward. Now, here is what you might want to know about the future. 1. Y2K is a disaster. Many people die on the highways when they freeze to death trying to get to warmer weather, due to all the power grids being down. 2. The government tries to keep power by instituting martial law, but all of it collapses when their efforts to bring the power back up fail. 3. A power facility in Denver is able to restart itself, but is mobbed by hundreds of thousands of people and destroyed. This convinces most that maybe we shouldn't bring the old system back up. 4. A few years later, a communal government system is developed after the Constitution takes a few twists. China retakes Taiwan, Israel wins the largest battle for their life, and Russia is covered in nuclear snow from their collapsed reactors. Art. The reason I'm here now is because I believe a nuclear weapon set off by Iraq in the Middle East war with Israel might have something to do with the damaged timeline. I will test that theory and get back to you. Please pray that we discover the reason why there is no apparent future after 2564. I am glad you're back. I faxed this information to you the day before you left the air. I wanted to make sure it wasn't lost in the shuffle, so I am sending a gift. If you've already seen this, please accept my apologies. If you choose to make this public, Please do not publish the fax number. I had to fax when I heard the other time traveler calling in from the recent time past, in fact, the year 2500. Let me explain, Mr. Bell. I sent a fax with this opening on July 29, 1998. As I said then, I am a time traveler. I have been on this world line since April of this year, and I plan to leave soon. Typically, time travelers do not purposely affect the world lines they visit. However, this mission is unusually long, and I've grown attached to some of the people I have met here. Anyway, for my own reasons, I have decided to help this world line by sharing information about the future with a few people in the hope that it will help their future. I am contacting you for the same reason. Unfortunately, there is no historical reference to your program in my world line. I believe you can change your future by creating one now. Some of the information presented on your program may be invaluable to upline researchers. I suggest you isolate the programs that concentrate on military technology and new physics theories. Transcribe these programs and put them someplace safe away from the box. I recommend someplace in the Midwest. I also urge you to reconsider your paranoia to the Russians. They are not preparing for war with the average US citizen. They are preparing for war with the US government. They will eventually save this country and the lives of millions of Americans. I realize my claims are a bit difficult to accept, so I will send the following once I know you have received this fax. A few pages from the operations manual of my time machine, and a few colored photographs of my vehicle. If you wish to contact me, I will be happy to share with you the nature of time, the physics of time travel, and some of the events of your future.
Art Bell never heard from the time traveler again. 2 years later, on November 2, 2000, a user calling themselves Time Travel Zero began posting on the Time Travel Institute forums. The initial posts were not grand pronouncements, but dry, technical discussions about the physics of time travel. The user spoke of the 6 parts required for a working time machine and answered questions with a detached, almost academic tone. This slow, methodical approach was a calculated strategy. The author didn't arrive with a fantastic tale, which would have been easily dismissed. Instead, they began by building a foundation of pseudo-scientific credibility within a small, receptive community. The audience wasn't just being told a story, they were being invited to participate in its construction by asking questions, fostering a sense of investment and belief. In January 2001, the user moved to the Art Bell forums, a platform that required a registered name. Time Travel Zero became John Titor, and the anonymous technical expert was replaced by a protagonist with a name and a story.
Greetings. I am a time traveler from the year 2036. I am on my way home after getting an IBM 5100 computer system from the year 1975. My time machine is a stationary mass, temporal displacement unit manufactured by General Electric. The unit is powered by 2 top-spin, dual positive singularities that produce a standard offset Tipler sinusoid. I will be happy to post pictures of the unit.
For the next 4 months, John Titor would spin one of the internet's most elaborate and enduring legends. Then, in late March 2001, he vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. His final piece of advice was not a grand warning, but a strangely mundane and cryptic farewell. Bring a gas can with you when your car dies on the side of the road. John's story was specific and compelling. He claimed to be an American soldier from the year 2036 based in Tampa, Florida, serving in a government unit dedicated to temporal reconnaissance. His primary mission was not to visit our time, but to travel to 1975 to retrieve a specific piece of vintage technology, an IBM 5100 portable computer. The reason, he claimed, was critical. In his future, society was struggling to rebuild after a devastating war, and they relied on old, legacy computer systems. These systems were facing a catastrophic bug. a very real issue known as the Unix Year 2038 problem. On that date, 32-bit systems that measure time in seconds from January 1, 1970 will run out of numbers and fail. The IBM 5100, Titor explained, was the key. To add a personal layer to the mission, he stated that his own grandfather had been an engineer on the team that developed the 5100. His stopover in the year 2000 was, he said, for personal reasons, to visit his family, including his toddler self, and to collect old photographs that had been lost in the future Civil War. This detail humanized the character, transforming him from a cold military operative into a relatable son and grandson, and provided a plausible excuse for why a time traveler would spend months talking to strangers on the internet. But it was his knowledge of the IBM 5100 that would become the anchor for the entire legend. Titor claimed the machine possessed a secret, unpublicized feature: the ability to emulate and debug code written for older IBM mainframes. In 2000, this was an incredibly obscure piece of technical trivia. Yet, years later, IBM engineers would confirm it was true. Bob Dubke, one of the original engineers, stated the function was kept quiet over concerns about how IBM's competition might use it. This verifiable secret was the story's masterstroke. It was not a prediction of the future, but a statement of hidden fact from the past. For a growing community of followers, the question was inescapable. How could a random person on a forum have known this? This single, verifiable detail lent an astonishing amount of weight to the more fantastic parts of his story, making the impossible seem plausible. Titor didn't just claim to have a time machine, he brought schematics. He described his vehicle, the C204 Gravity Distortion Time Displacement Unit, with a flood of technical jargon. He called it a stationary mass, temporal displacement unit, powered by two top-spin, dual positive singularities, which produced a standard offset Tipler sinusoid. Although his description sounds far-fetched to a lot of us, this was a direct reference to a theoretical time travel method outlined by physicist Frank Tipler in 1974. He listed the core components like this: two magnetic housing units for the microsingularities, an electron injection manifold to alter mass and gravity, a cooling and X-ray venting system, sensitive gravity sensors, what he called a variable gravity lock, 4 main cesium clocks for accuracy, and 3 primary computer units to control it all. He also posted grainy photos that allegedly showed the device in operation with a laser beam visibly bending around it, and he shared diagrams from what he claimed was its technical manual. According to him, the unit weighed about 500 pounds. It was first installed in a 1967 Chevrolet Corvette, then later moved to a more practical 1987 four-wheel drive truck. The images he shared online of his machine were presented as digital scans of Polaroid images he had taken. An analysis of the pictures concluded that they could have legitimately come from scanning printed photos, which lent a layer of plausibility to his story. He even provided an insignia for his military unit, the 177th Temporal Reconnaissance Unit. The motto was a quote from the Roman poet Ovid: Tempus edax rerum, time, the devourer of all things. This deluge of technobabble, combined with the visual aids, created a powerful illusion of authenticity. To a layperson, the science was too complex to debunk, and the sheer volume of detail suggested a system too well conceived to be a simple prank. It wasn't designed to be scientifically accurate, but to appear scientifically rigorous, further cementing the credibility that began with the secret of the IBM 5100. John Titor's mission may have been technical, but his message was a dire warning. He painted a grim portrait of our near future, a future that was his past. His most detailed and terrifying prophecy was of a second American Civil War. He claimed it would begin with escalating civil unrest following the 2004 presidential election, leading to a Waco-type event every month that steadily gets worse. At the age of 13, he said, he joined a shotgun infantry unit called the Fighting Diamondbacks. By 2008, he said, the conflict would be an undeniable war, pitting rural militias against federal forces in the urban centers. This war would tear the nation apart, eventually causing the United States to fracture into 5 smaller sovereign regions. The federal government would collapse, and the capital would be moved to Omaha, Nebraska. This internal conflict, he warned, would culminate in a global catastrophe. In 2015, on what his future called End Day, Russia would launch a nuclear strike against the major cities of America, China, and Europe. The resulting exchange would be brief but devastating, killing nearly 3 billion people. In the aftermath, life became simpler and centered on family and community. People grew their own food, spent more time reading and talking, and religion was taken seriously. He offered other, smaller predictions. The Olympic Games would be canceled after 2004 due to the widespread conflict. Mad cow disease would become a rampant plague. And he claimed that CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, would discover the foundational physics for time travel sometime around 2001. These weren't random predictions. They were a carefully crafted reflection of the anxieties of a world on the cusp of a new millennium. The narrative of a civil war between citizens and an overreaching government tapped directly into the anti-federalist sentiment that followed events like the Waco siege. The fear of technological collapse was fresh from the global Y2K panic, and the specter of nuclear war with Russia, though faded, was still a potent cultural nightmare. John Titor's future was a mirror, showing his audience their own deepest fears made real. The future Titor described never came. The 2004 election passed without triggering a civil war. The 2008 Olympics were a global spectacle, and 2015 came and went without a nuclear exchange. The central, specific, and falsifiable predictions of John Titor had failed. While some of his broader social and political predictions later seemed surprisingly accurate, the core pillars of his prophecy crumbled under the simple passage of time. By any objective measure, the story was false. But John had a built-in alibi. From his very first posts, he claimed that the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics was correct. This theory posits that every possible outcome of a decision creates a new parallel universe. He argued that his very act of traveling back in time and interacting with us created a new world line. Our universe was now on a different path from his. He estimated the divergence to be small, perhaps only 1 or 2%, but it was enough to change the future. This was not just a scientific footnote, it was a brilliant narrative shield. It rendered his entire story unfalsifiable. Any failed prediction wasn't a sign of a hoax. It was proof that his warnings had worked, that we had successfully altered our destiny. For believers, this transformed John Titor from a failed prophet into a savior. For skeptics, it was the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card, a way to ensure the mystery could never truly be solved and the legend could live forever. As Titor's predictions failed, the search for his true identity intensified. The most significant clue emerged in 2003 with the creation of the John Titor Foundation, a for-profit LLC. The commercialization of the story was a major red flag, and the company's only address was a rented post office box in Kissimmee, Florida. An investigation by an Italian television program, and later expanded by online sleuth John Huston, known as Razimus, traced the foundation to its CEO, a Florida-based entertainment lawyer named Larry Haber. Suspicion quickly fell on his family. His brother, Maury Haber, was a computer scientist, a profession that aligned perfectly with the deep technical knowledge displayed in the Titor posts, especially concerning the IBM 5100. Another brother, John Rick Haber, also worked in information technology. The circumstantial evidence mounted. An IP address connected to the early Titor communications was traced to Celebration, Florida, a town where Maury Haber was living at the time the posts were being made. The story's complexity, combining obscure computer history, speculative physics, military jargon, and a compelling narrative, suggested a collaboration. The Haber brothers, with their combined expertise in law, business, and computer science, fit the profile perfectly. Further complicating the picture was Joseph Matheny, the creator of Ong's Hat, one of the internet's first alternate reality games. Ong's Hat was a fictional narrative disguised as a true conspiracy involving secret physics experiments, parallel dimensions, and a hidden research facility in Ong's Hat, New Jersey. Over the years, Matheny has spoken publicly about his suspicion that the Titor saga was a similar experimental narrative. At one point, he stated that, "I was a consultant on something that turned into the Titor story. It was a literary experiment, a test to see if belief could be seeded and cultivated online." Matheny never claimed authorship, but he implied that what unfolded had the unmistakable architecture of design, not coincidence. And then there is Pamela Moore, perhaps the most personal and poignant piece of the puzzle. Moore was one of Titor's earliest online confidants, a true believer who developed a close connection with him through their private correspondence. As Titor prepared to allegedly vanish from our timeline, he anticipated that imposters might try to exploit his story. To protect Pamela, he entrusted her with a secret, the title of a specific song, known only to them. This song title was designed to function as a private password, a tool for verification. If anyone contacted her in the future, claiming to be the time traveler, only the real John Titor would know this code. It was a safeguard, allowing Pamela to definitively confirm his identity and expose any frauds. But as the years passed, that verification never came. For Pamela, this silence became an open wound, proof either of a deep betrayal or of a destiny kept just beyond her reach. Her unwavering loyalty cast her as both the story's primary guardian and its most tragic figure. To this day, no one has ever definitively claimed authorship. And that lingering silence remains the strongest reason why, for some, the mystery is still not solved. "20 years after he vanished, the story of John Titor refuses to die. It has become a foundational myth of the digital age, a pioneering example of online folklore that paved the way for countless creepypastas and alternate reality games that followed. But its most significant cultural echo is found in a place few would have expected: Japanese anime. In 2009, the visual novel Steins Gate was released, later adapted into a wildly popular anime. The John Titor legend isn't a passing reference, it's the backbone of the plot. The protagonist is pulled into a conspiracy involving a time traveler named John Titor, a mission to obtain an IBM 5100 computer, and a shadowy European research group bent on using time travel to create a dystopia. The name of the group? CERN, spelled with an S. The story even provides its own answer to the mystery, revealing that John Titor is in fact a female character from the future named Suzuha Amane. Steins Gate took the raw material of the forum posts, the mission, the technobabble, the theory of diverging world lines, and wove it into an emotional, globally successful narrative. This created a unique cultural feedback loop. A new generation of fans, captivated by the anime, discovered that its incredible story was based on a real internet mystery, driving fresh waves of interest back to the dusty archives of the original forum posts. The fiction had become the primary guardian of the fact. So who was John Titor? A soldier from a war-torn future? An elaborate hoax by a group of clever Floridians? Or a literary experiment that grew beyond its creator's control? The evidence overwhelmingly points to a hoax, a brilliant, multi-layered, and perfectly timed piece of digital theater. But the story's power was never truly in its predictions. It was in the way it combined a verifiable, obscure fact with a narrative that reflected the deepest anxieties of its time. It was a story that came with its own intellectual armor, an unfalsifiable premise that made it immortal. In his final post, Titor recounted a story of his parents refusing to help a stranded motorist out of fear, explaining that this is why time travelers don't reveal themselves. In trying to help you, he wrote, we put ourselves at great risk, and there's really no point to it. In the end, John Titor is best understood not as a person, but as a modern myth, a folktale born on the internet, transmitted through the new oral tradition of copy and paste, and ultimately canonized in popular culture. A ghost in the machine who brought us a warning, a mystery, and a set of schematics for a future that thankfully never arrived. At least not yet. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the strange and compelling story of John Titor. Creating these explorations into modern mysteries is a passion of mine, and your support, every view, like, and comment, is what makes it all possible. It is truly and deeply appreciated. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, and you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. Your subscription is the single biggest way to support the channel. It helps us grow and allows me to continue exploring the mysteries that hide in the digital shadows. Thanks again for watching. And until next time, keep questioning.